All right, it is Wednesday, and we are here to study together. I'm really excited about it. If you hear some popping and creaking, if you can hear some wind blowing, I apologize. There is some severe weather coming into the area. We will not be having in-person services tonight because of that severe weather. Possible tornadoes, straight line winds. The schools were even dismissed a little early today just to make sure that the kids were all right. So we will not be having in-person services tonight. This will serve as our Bible study for the week. So no meal and no in-person services at the church. But we do want to be praying that everyone is safe through the storms. Want to be praying for all of those that are on our regular prayer list. Be in prayer for Ann Wright as she recovers from her surgery. Be in prayer for David Fleming as he's recovering. Be in prayer for Carol Judd as she's getting over her surgery. We've got several folks that are really in need of your prayers. Don Adams got to do his last chemo treatment and is waiting to see about some scans that will be done here in the next week or two. And then he should be going down to Nashville and starting some radiation. So just pray that he is going to get great news on those scans, that there's no cancer and that they can start working on those things as well. The hip, the other things that he has. We've been kidding him. He's going to be the $6 million man with all of the treatments and medical things that he's went through this year, but God's taken good care of him. He has really, really done well. Continue to pray for our church, for our leadership, and for our country, for the people that are in leadership roles in America that are dealing with everything going on in the Ukraine and Russia. Pray for the people over there. There are many people that are not involved in the fighting of the war, but are definitely affected by it. I think I saw that there are over 4 million refugees that have poured out of the country, and even if things were to stop and the folks were allowed to go back in, there's not much left for many to go home to. So just pray for them. They certainly need it. So I would ask you if you would hit the pause button, pray for those. If you've got a prayer request and you want to share that, put a comment down below in the video or send that to our church at Reidland Christian, REIDLAND Christian, at gmail.com. So we encourage you to do that. So if you would pray, and we are going to jump into, as I've said before, a little controversial chapter, and it's not controversial. It's just that we like to read things into this, or we like to lay it over the top of what's going on in our lives and say, "Oh yeah, I bet that's what that's talking about." And when Jesus spoke these words, when Matthew wrote these words to a bunch of believers, a bunch of Jewish believers that needed some encouragement, there was a specific reasoning for these words. And as we'll see, some of them have already come to pass. Some of them we can see connections to what we're experiencing in our world today and what people have experienced all through the years. There's just so many things that can be drawn from this, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this was written for a very specific reason. And I want us to kind of dig down into it, and really not even dig down that much, just see what the words say to start off and understand it, put it in the proper context. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at some things. I'm going to skip around a little bit, not read all of the verses. I would encourage you to read the entire chapter yourself, Matthew chapter 24, and it'll give you sort of a fuller picture, but I really, really like what happens here. Jesus basically says that the temple is going to be torn down, that there won't be a stone left on top of one another, that all the stones will be scattered, the temple will no longer be there. This is both a physical reality that happens in 70 AD. Rome comes in, destroys the temple, sets everything on fire in Jerusalem, and the stones were rolled off of each other in the temple, just practically speaking, so that if there was any gold or silver or precious metal or some kind of treasure that was melted in that fire or that fell in between the cracks of walls and the structure, they'd be able to loot it. So he was talking about the physical temple, but he was also talking about the spiritual temple of his body, that the temple would be destroyed. Now, he does say in other places that in 3 days that temple would be raised again, foretelling his resurrection and the power that we have in the resurrection of Jesus. So with that being said, Jesus tells the disciples in verse 1 and 2 about the end of the age, the temple not being there anymore. And I think it's interesting and very important for us to note before Jesus expands on all of this and gives us a lot of these verses that can be taken out of context or twisted around to fit whatever is going on in the world today, there's a question that's asked. So in verse 3 of Matthew 24, as he sat down on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to Jesus privately so that they kind of get him to the side. They've been told all of this stuff. They're a little nervous, maybe wonder exactly how this is going to unfold, and they ask him a question. They say, Lord, tell us, when will these things be? When is the temple going to be destroyed? When is all of this going to happen? When will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Several weeks ago, we talked about Mark's version of this. And I stressed it then, and I want to stress again. I cannot stress this enough. When we look at the entirety of this chapter and we see things like abomination of desolation, we see things like darkness and just all of the cryptic prophetic words and terminology that's being used, keep that in its proper framework. Jesus responds by talking about all of those prophetic things, all of those things that could line up with other real world events, because of this question being asked. Lord, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus' response, the first thing he says to the disciples when they say, when will this happen? Give us a time frame. What is this going to look like? So tell us what we should be keeping our eyes out for and those kinds of things. So when and what? They want to know. They want to be informed. Jesus says this, see to it that no one leads you astray. He doesn't give them specific, this is the date, this is the hour. In fact, Jesus is about to say, no one knows the day nor the hour. He says, be sure that no one deceives you. See to it that no one leads you astray. Jesus wants his disciples to understand that when it comes to prophecy, when it comes to a lot of these things that are said in Scripture, it's very easy to twist things. It's easy to say, well, I was reading in Revelation and there's a battle of Gog and Magog, and I think that is the Ukraine and Russia, or I think that was Germany and the Allied forces. I think that was, you go back at whatever war you want to look at all through the years, and you can place the Antichrist title, you can place the destroyer, you can place the dragon, you can look at lots of different titles and you can put those on people. And what happens is we see that there are people that will twist those for their own benefit. Many times it's people saying, well, I was reading this and I think I'm ahead of the curve. I think I figured out who this is. Jesus says, before you talk about any of that, before you think about any of it, before you try to apply it to anything that's going on, see to it that no one deceives you. No one leads you astray. So he continues, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. They will lead many astray, and you will hear of wars and of rumors of wars. See to it that you are not alarmed, for this must take place. There will be lots of wars. There will be lots of rumors of wars. Not every national or world conflict that happens means that Jesus is coming back. He says, be careful. Don't be alarmed at all of this, but be careful that no one leads you astray. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places, but this is just the beginning of birth pains. Jesus is very clear here. The disciples say, when is this going to happen and what is it going to look like? And Jesus says, before I get to any of that, don't be led astray. Don't be deceived. Don't focus on, how is it going to end? What's it going to look like? How is all this going to happen? When is this going to come about? He says, don't be deceived. Focus on me. Keep your eyes on God. And as Christians, we should keep our eyes on Jesus Christ firmly. So he begins to tell them there's going to be some things that aren't very good. He says they will deliver you up. This is verse 9. Up to tribulation, put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Many will fall away, betray me, one another, hate one another. Many false prophets will rise and lead many astray. All of this keeps hammering on one point, not when it's going to happen, not what it's going to look like, but the fact that many people will come and they will use end times prophecy, they will use wars and rumors of wars to twist people, to take them away from Christ, to make it look like they're in charge. Oh, I knew what was coming, so I knew how things were going to play out. I must be pretty important. Jesus wanted his people to know there is rescue, and that comes only from Jesus Christ. But there's going to be a lot of people that will try to give you false hope, will try to give you false security, and that I know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. Jesus goes on and he says, but those who endures to the end will be saved. Doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter when it happens. Will you be faithful? Will you endure to the end? This gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Our job is not to know when and how and where and, oh, I saw this coming from a mile away. Our job is to remain faithful, to endure until the end, and to allow Jesus to save us. He then goes into a long section on the abomination of desolation. He says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place. And then he goes on. And a lot of people say, oh, I know who that is. I bet I know who that is. I see what's going on here. Oh, that's got to be Putin. Oh, that's got to be Obama or Biden or Trump or Bush or Clinton. You can go all the way back. There are many people that have been said to be the Antichrist, to be the person that's going to start a one world government or a new world order. A lot of people don't focus on the person as much. And again, I would encourage you to read that. That is verses 15 all the way down through 28. And he says, be aware. There's going to be some things that happen, but again, go back to that first part. Let no one deceive you, and endure until the end. And we don't know when our end is going to come. It might be soon, and it could be a long time away. A lot of people like to focus on the physical signs, not the person that's going to be there. And this gets twisted out. Verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven. The powers of heaven will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and the tribes of all the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And I want to tell you that first part, people say, there's going to be no light. The sun's going to be put out. The moon won't give its light. The stars from heaven will go out. The powers of heaven will be shaken. The dead in Christ will rise, or the dead will rise. Every bit of that happened in Matthew 27, verses 45, verse 51. Go look that up. Matthew 27, verse 45, 51. At the cross, there was a powerful earthquake. Verse 51. Darkness completely covered the world. Verse 45. Dead people came out of the graves and were telling people the gospel message. Imagine that. Dead people rising from the grave and telling people the good news. Stay faithful until the end. That's what Jesus said. Now, I firmly believe that this is given to God's people so that when we see things similar to this, we can ask ourselves, is it close? Am I living the way that I should be? But Jesus also wants us to know in verse 36, concerning that day and that hour, no one knows. Jesus says this clearly. Concerning the day and concerning the hour, no one knows. No one knows when that's going to happen. We don't know when we're going to die. Doctor might tell us you only have 5 weeks, 6 months, a year to live. We might last a lot longer, and we might go a lot quicker. We might think, well, I've got tons of time. And then we're blindsided by a vehicle on the road, and we don't have any time. A heart attack strikes, and we're gone. Jesus tells us, verse 36 of Matthew 24, no one knows the day nor the hour, not even the angels of heaven. And this is important. I want you to catch this. No one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels, nor the Son. Jesus does not know when he's coming back. He's simply waiting for his Father to tap him on the shoulder and say, now's the time. If Jesus doesn't know the time, why are we so concerned with it? Is it so that we can feel in control? Is it so that we can puff ourselves up with pride and say, I saw that coming. I knew exactly what was going to happen. But concerning the day and the hour, no one knows, not the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Only God himself knows when it is time for the world to go and for us as individuals to go. And he begins to talk about the days of Noah. Noah didn't know the exact moment when it was going to rain. He just knew that he was supposed to be faithful to God, to build that ark. And when the time came, the animals got on. The Lord shut the door to the ark. And Noah was faithful, and he rode out all of the rain and the destruction. And when it was time, Noah got out and he started a new life that was faithful to God. I'd encourage you to read that specifically. Jesus closes in verse 45 by saying, who then is faithful and wise, whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so when he comes. Jesus asks the question, who's the faithful servant? Is it the one who knows the time and the place and how everything's going to unfold? Or is it the one that is found being faithful whenever the master comes back? Who then is faithful? Who is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find doing so when he comes. Truly I say so to you, he will set him over his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants, eats and drinks with drunkards, the master will come on a day when he does not expect him, in the hour that he does not know, and he will cut him to pieces. You have two choices. Neither of them is knowing the day nor the hour, knowing all of the signs and everything. You have two choices. You can be faithful and wait. You can endure until the end, or you can party it up and hope you don't get caught. And sadly, we're told that the master will come back and he will find what we've done. He will know what is right. There's a lot that can be said here. There's a lot that can be taken out of context. I want to share something with you, and this will close our time. Again, I will encourage you to go back and read all of Matthew 24. It's a fantastic chapter. There can be a lot of things that get muddied up in the water, but I want you to focus on the fact that the disciples ask the question to start all of this discussion, Lord, when is this going to happen and what will the signs be? And Jesus' response is, endure until the end and let no man deceive you. Don't be taken advantage of, and don't think that you know it all. Just be ready, because whenever Jesus does come back, or whenever your life stops, you better be ready. So let me close by saying this. There's a man by the name of Ben Kramer who posted this, and I love it. He says, imagine if our Christian worldview of the end times centered upon preparing for Christ rather than preparing for an antichrist. Imagine if it centered on the mark of the Lamb instead of the mark of the beast. Oh, I know what they're doing. They're giving us the mark of the beast. They're giving us this. What do I need to do so that I'm clearly marked for Jesus? So that instead of looking for an antichrist, I'm looking for Jesus. And are people that are looking for Jesus Christ every day, are they seeing him in me? What if our view of the end times was centered on preparing for redeeming the earth rather than escaping it in a ball of fire? The Lord's going to come back. He's going to blow this place up. He's going to start fresh. Well, he is going to start fresh, but he's going to make good on that promise of redemption. We are going to see the fulfillment of what Jesus was the first fruits of when he was resurrected. We are going to see the grave and death overcome if we are faithful, if we endure to the end, and we are not deceived. Imagine if our view of the end times centered on faith rather than fear. Look for the Christ, the Son of the living God. You'll find Jesus if you're looking. Don't look for the Antichrist. Look for a mark of the Lamb. Let it be absolutely clear that you are a child of the Most High King, that you are a son or a daughter of God, and you have the mark of the Master on you because you live the way the Master asks you to live. You love people. You serve people. Prepare for redemption, not for destruction. I hope that you've been blessed by this. I know I have. I hope that you remain safe and that everything goes well with you. Until we talk again next week, I'm excited to see what comes of this. Share your thoughts and your ideas and your comments in the comments section below. Send me an email. And if there's something I can pray for you about, I would love to do that. God bless you. Have a great week.